Welcome everyone to this webinar for Helix Resources, ASX code HLX. The webinar will provide an update on the company's exploration activities at its copper-focused projects located within the Cobar region of New South Wales, Australia, including a recently commenced diamond and RC drill program to test highly prospective geophysical targets at Fiveways and Quanda. Following the presentation, attendees will have the opportunity to ask questions directly to Managing Director Mike Rosenstreich during a moderated Q&A session. So as the presentation is occurring, think about what questions you would like asked and submit them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And I will put them to Mike during the Q&A session. Okay, let's get started. I'd now like to introduce Helix Managing Director Mike Rosenstreich, who will give the formal presentation. As I said, at the end, we will then move into a moderated Q&A. Mike, over to you.
Thank you very much, David, and good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us this morning. Being invested in the junior sector of the exploration industry can be a life-changing moment when that company makes a discovery. I use the analogy, it can be a bit of a copper Powerball moment. Of course, it's not easy to win a lottery, and I think Helix has got a lot of things going for it to enhance those odds. We're well funded. We have just under $6 million cash as at the end of the financial year. We've got a large strategic ground position in the Cobar Nyngan area of central New South Wales. We have advanced copper resources, and our exploration team is locally based on the doorstep of the projects. And we've got a range of new targets coming through, such as we reported this morning on the ASX platform. The copper story is compelling. Regardless of your battery chemistry or your power generation technology, it doesn't matter if you need lithium or cobalt or nickel. At the end of the day, you always need copper to connect those devices, to transport those electrons. And there are a variety of industry commentators who are highlighting to us a very significant copper deficit that is already emerging. This is being driven by the decarbonisation trend, by electric vehicles and renewable energy generation. In terms of that Powerball analogy, we're very clear as to where we're presenting the opportunity for our investors. If we look at the classic Lassonde curve in terms of value compared to the progress of a project, we are here. We're offering investors to come on board and ride this value curve with successful exploration leading to a discovery. We're focused in the Cobar area of New South Wales, and this is a prolific copper producing area for well over 100 years. If we have a look at our tenement position, we have the western and eastern tenements in the middle, and the quality of our neighbours is superb. To the north of us, we have the Triton operations, which have been mining and finding new copper deposits for the best part of the last 30 years. Over on the western side here, we have a standout operation, the CSA mine. This has been mining pretty much continuously now for the last 65 years and is one of the highest grade copper deposits in the world, around 5% resource grade. It recently was sold by Glencore to Metals Acquisition Corp for $1 billion. So there's obviously plenty of life ahead of this high-grade deposit. And then we also have Kingston operating their Mineral Hill project to the south of us, and Aurelia at their Peak and Hera operations. We have emerging deposits such as the Federation and Peel's South Cobar project now focusing on copper. So there's a lot happening in this neighbourhood, and clearly Helix has a very strategic land position in the middle of it. One of the other aspects that I particularly like about this neighbourhood is that there are 6 processing plants within reasonable distance of our tenements, and each one of them is capable of processing the kind of mineralization that we are looking for. That's really important because it highlights that whether or not one makes a modest discovery or a very significant sized deposit discovery, there are opportunities to commercialize it. So let's have a look more specifically at the Helix tenements. As I've described previously, we divide them into our eastern tenements and our western tenements. And what we have here is these discrete mineralized trends. The Rochford trend shown here to the northwest, this very extensive Colorina trend, which comprises prospective stratigraphy right up through Eris's ground into a new license that we've applied for, and this Mariula trend, which we haven't done a lot of work on yet. So we'll be talking mainly about the Rochford and Colorina trends. All up, that's nearly 3,000 square kilometres of tenure. It's a very commanding prospective land position. Many times, I think you hear people like myself say, it's a large land position and it's underexplored. And I joined Helix in early 21 because I genuinely considered that this is a very underexplored tenement package in a highly prospective terrain. What I don't intend to do is be speaking to you in 2 years' time and still be describing it as seriously underexplored. Hope you will see that through the rest of this presentation, we are pulling out all stops to do systematic, effective, large-scale regional exploration to make new copper discoveries. It's a bit of a numbers game. The more targets you generate, you test, the more chances you have of bringing earlier stage prospects and targets and advancing them up this development pyramid. Some are going to drop off and away, but hopefully others will go through and become developments. Really fortunate to have a highly experienced, permanent exploration team, regionally based, entirely focused on the work that Helix is undertaking on its tenements. In terms of a bit of an outline for the rest of this discussion, I'd like to sort of focus it around recent developments and what's ahead. We have the high-grade Cambalago mineral resource, which was recently updated. And then we have a series of potential new discoveries in the east in terms of geophysical targets, and particularly at the west at the moment in terms of geochemical targets. So let's just take a quick look at some of these. In the west, along this Rochford trend, in particular, we are looking for Cobar style deposits. This is the kind of deposit that the CSA mine is. These tend to be high grade, have a very modest footprint, but extend over tremendous distances vertically. And they tend to occur in parallel lodes. These are very attractive targets to be hunting for. And we feel that our tenements and our prospects along here have the potential for this style of deposit. This is a plan view of the Cambalago project area, overlain on anomalous copper and soil. This has been the focus for us for the last year or two. In quite difficult access and weather-related circumstances, this is a prospect that we've been continually able to get access to and I think add value to. What I have shown here is the main lode mineral resource and plan view. And before we look at the long section view of that, I'd just like to highlight the relatively recently defined western lodes. And these are important because I said earlier that Cobar style systems often occur in parallel lodes. And these lode positions were not previously recognized, and they build up or reinforce our Cobar model for this style of mineralization. We've got lots of work planned here for the coming year, but let's have a look at the mineral resource that we have just reported in mid-June. What you see here is through long section is a mineralized zone that it goes for about 400 meters north-south. There was a mineral resource estimated, which I've shown here in this outline, in 2010. It's interesting to note that this project had no work done on it from 2013 to early 2021, which is roughly when I joined the company. And the premise was that if this is Cobar style mineralization with strong vertical continuity, then the place to drill and extend copper resources was beneath the known workings and the current mineral resource of the time. And lo and behold, our second drill hole, we hit 18 meters at 3.4% copper. In fact, we didn't even report the assays. We just reported a picture of the drill core, and our share price went from 1 cent to 5 cents. And I think that's an example of the Powerball effect when a discovery company makes a discovery or gets onto significant high-grade copper mineralization. Since then, we've done extensive drilling to trace high-grade shoots down to around 500 meters vertical. And what we've also been able to do is, for the first time, map out thick, high-grade zones of copper in the shallow portions of the mineralized zone as well. And this has come together to form an upgraded mineral resource where we've boosted contained copper by 77% through both tons and grade. 1.8 million tons now at 1.74% copper for 32,000 tons of contained copper metal. I think there's significant potential to further add to this mineral resource, particularly at the western lodes and in other proximal prospects such as a Caballero and some geophysical targets that we have. Now I'd like to just step out a little bit and have a look at the regional exploration opportunities. A geophysical technique where you measure the conductivity of the rocks, known as electromagnetics, is an important discovery tool in this area. It is how our neighbours to the north at Tritton discovered several of their deposits, including the more recent Constellation discovery. And within a couple of years, they have turned that electromagnetic anomaly into nearly 7 million tons of resource, grading around 2% copper with a significant gold credit. That is what Helix is hunting for, south along trend on our tenements. So it's interesting that when I joined the company in early 21, the only electromagnetic or airborne electromagnetic work that had been done is within this yellow square around the CZ copper project. So we very quickly went and raised $3 million, and we spent nearly $1 million flying the other 80% of the prospective trends at Colorina, Rochford, and Mariola. And that's a really important data set that we keep coming back to because it enables us to detect new anomalies and also then take the new and the existing prospects and be able to rank and prioritize them to decide which ones we should focus on first. And what's exciting is that we have recently been able to follow up on a couple of these anomalous targets at our Quanda and Fiveways prospects. You can see by the nature of the aerial photograph, particularly in the east here, this is land under cultivation. So when in 21 we had drought-breaking rains, the landowners were very keen to finally, after 5-6 years of drought, get some crops in the ground. And then unfortunately in 22, when there was also significant heavy rains, which were not so beneficial to the landowners, it also caused issues in terms of our access to the ground. So finally, a couple of months back, we got our geophysical crews on the property and we tested whether or not we could confirm these airborne electromagnetic anomalies. And it's great news that out of the 5 targets that we tested, 4 turned out to be basement conductors. And right now we've started drilling those. So let's have a look at the areas that we are drilling at Fiveways and then at Quanda. So this is an aerial photo of the Fiveways prospect. And in pink, we have shown the modelled conductive target that resulted from that ground geophysical EM survey. And you can see the nature of the country here being very flat and sort of cropped paddocks. What we're drilling here, these are the model targets shown in pink here. In this particular case, at Fiveways, we are testing that basement conductor with a 250-metre deep diamond hole. Overall, the conductors that we are testing at Fiveways and in the Quanda Hermidale area to the north generally occur between 75 to around about 200 metres vertical depth. So particularly at the Quanda Hermidale series of targets, we're able to employ reverse circulation drilling. We can get more holes in, we can test them more quickly. So that program is on foot now. Another important aspect of the regional work, and we did make a release this morning to provide an update on that, is geochemical targeting work. We're trying to look through transported cover, or we're trying to look through geochemically in terms of deeply weathered terrains. Unlike some of the historical work, we're now trying to use multi-element associations or pathfinder elements in a really systematic and regional scale approach. We've had up to 3 different crews utilizing these type of mechanical auger drill rigs to rapidly generate samples and assess the ground. And we've had a series of announcements providing updates. These announcements have included the identification of the Black Range anomaly, which is very significant, and I'll talk about that a little bit shortly. But also in today's announcement, we've highlighted the upgrading and the re-ranking of the Bijou anomaly down here to the south, and we have ongoing emerging anomalies right along the Rochford copper trend. This is really important work in terms of being able to compare the different anomalies and use the pathfinder associations to rank them. One example is Black Range to the north of the Rochford trend. That anomalous zone is something like 6 kilometres by nearly 2 kilometres wide. We are finding far more extensive historical underground workings than are recorded in the public records. And we have had high-grade rock chip results, and there is not a drill hole within 4 or 5 kilometres of this Black Range prospect. Similarly, this morning, we gave an update on our Bijou anomaly. This is also now turning out to be a high tenor and large-scale anomaly, over 2 kilometres long by over 1 kilometre wide, with a really important silver molybdenum bismuth association. Interestingly, it also has a lot of geological similarities to the Cambalago mineral deposit. So we seem to be on track to uncovering a high priority target, and we will be drilling this when we've finished the drilling on the eastern tenements. So I'd like to give you a sense that we have a very busy exploration crew doing very systematic work, leading, hopefully, to new discoveries. We do the geophysics, we do the geochemistry. We've got geologists on the ground making observations, doing mapping. But ultimately, the key test is the drilling rig. And some days ago, the drilling rig rolled out, and right now it's turning and it's starting to test these targets, and we will go through as many as we can. How we operate is really important to our team, our corporate culture, and how our standing in the community. We refer to this now as ESG, and we have an ESG framework that we plan to grow into as our activities expand. At the moment, we have particular focus in terms of stakeholder relationships and also the professional development of our team. In terms of a corporate snapshot of Helix, the company was listed in 1986. In the last 2 years, we've raised $20 million. We have a cash position, last reported, just under $6 million. That longevity of the company, and particularly some of the recent capital raises we've done, we have 2.3 billion shares on issue. It creates a lot of liquidity. Our board is compact, but with 3 directors spanning mining engineering, business development, finance, geological skills. And we have a very experienced exploration manager in Gordon Barnes, who's been in the New South Wales region for nearly 20 years. Our share register is wide open. 2 key shareholders are Mark Creasy's Yandal Investments Group and the Technical Ceramic Group. Interestingly, Technical Ceramics, Mr. Bullen Bessem, AG Investments, are relatively new to the register, and I think that their positions reflect their enthusiasm for the outlook of copper. What can we expect to read about from Helix reports? I think it's going to be all about or dominated by this drilling activity. This drilling activity is testing new targets now at Quanda, Hermidale, Fiveways, and then it's going to test other targets along the Rochford Trend, Black Range, Bijou, and perhaps some others as well. We will be doing ongoing investor relations activities, but the attention is going to be around this drilling. I've just completed an investor roadshow in the eastern states, and I can share with you that there are a lot of eyes on the story, keenly waiting to see what results we generate in what is currently pretty difficult market conditions. So just in wrapping up, I've used this analogy of the Powerball, the life-changing impact of making an investment in a junior explorer that's listed and that makes discoveries. I think that's very exciting. It can be life-changing for investors. I think we're really well positioned to create or to realize those dreams, given that we've got a strong funding position to get well onto a discovery pathway. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to take the questions as David presents them.
Thanks, Mike. Great presentation. As you say, we'll now move into the Q&A session. With the drill program, appreciate your testing early stage or new targets. What does success or failure look like?
That's a great question, because failure in some ways is quite easy to measure because you've drilled a duster. There is no geological excitement and you move on. That's easy. Success is a bit harder. You know, people talk about overnight success that actually took 10 years. The Constellation discovery was, I think, made on the 7th drill hole. But obviously, to go from the first drill hole testing those electromagnetic anomalies to move through to drill in the 7 holes that got an ore-grade intercept, there must have been encouraging geological signs. So I think success looks like, in an ideal world, success looks like 20 meters of lots of visible copper mineralization. But it might be that it looks like really strong geological indications, alteration, mineralogical associations. Let's wait and see. One of the great things about drilling copper deposits is quite often you are able to get visual estimates, and we have in the past, I think, sensibly reported visual results and then backed them up some weeks, 3, 4, 5 weeks later with the assay results.
Just looking at assays, there's a question here in terms of the current drilling. What do you think the assay timeline would be?
Look, I think it'll be around 4 to 5 weeks, because there is also the sample processing that we need to do in terms of cutting drill core, or perhaps a little bit faster taking chip samples from RC bags. I think around 5 weeks, plus or minus a little bit, is a fair answer. But I do observe that there is a much greater availability of drill rigs, and maybe that's translating into less pressure on the assay labs. I'm not 100% on that. We'll see how that works out.
And in terms of meterage, do you have an expectation on average meterage from the drill program for the diamond drilling?
Do you mean in terms of daily production?
Yeah.
Oh, look, I think typically these guys are getting, or will get, as they sort of settle into the rock style, say 20 to 30 meters a shift. We're only single shifting this rig, but we're going to move between diamond and RC methods. And what that does is enables us to perhaps work faster with the RC drill style. But it also gives us the ability that if we get onto something interesting, or maybe we get some problematical groundwater, that we're able to move from RC back to diamonds. So that's why we've got this multi-purpose rig to give us that optionality.
And can you expand a bit on the geochemical signatures? Have these signatures also been seen at other major operations like Triton?
Well, I'm not privy to what to their sort of IP in terms of their exploration, but in short, yes. One, that you've got anomalous copper. We're looking for copper deposits, so that's a great start. And then you've got these other associations, bismuth, tungsten and things like that, silver, molybdenum. So those are sort of regional trends, and what we're uncovering is consistent with those.
From a news flow point of view, you touched on it a second ago. What should investors be focusing on as key milestones?
Clearly that we are continuing to generate new targets and that we are drill testing them. And and the opportunity for us to be able to report visual results or assay results. So I would be disappointed if we're not providing further updates, say, about every fortnight in terms of the progress that we're making in terms of testing these targets and generating new targets.
Now, I can't ask you to predict the future, but in your presentation, you did say you don't want to be here in 2 years' time with a whole pile of untested targets or talking about the underexplored nature of the tenement package. What look forward 2 years without making a prediction or assumption or any of those things, but what do you want the message to be?
Well, I'd like to think that people could look at our results in that time frame, perhaps sooner, and they could clearly see that we have intercepts, that if you start to sort of draw lines around them with a crayon or a chalk, that you're starting to eye up a couple of 100,000 tons of copper, whether or not that's in one zone or a series of different deposits. I'm not saying that we would have a resource of that scale in that time, but I'm suggesting that if things go well, if we're broadly successful, people would certainly be able to sort of eye up the potential for very significant copper endowment. I think a couple of 100,000 tons is the kind of endowment or the kind of inventory of copper metal that you need to get really serious about thinking about your own operation, or to have your neighbours thinking very seriously about how they can work with you to develop those projects.
Final question. You did touch on neighbours. How inquisitive are your neighbours as to the activity you're doing, given the land holding, given the underexplored nature and what they know about their own projects?
I think there's a great deal of interest, and there's actually great collaboration or communication, I think, between the main players. And I'm not suggesting that Helix is a main player, because we really are sort of got emerging prospects. But groups like clearly Eris, where we have a joint venture with them at Cambelago, Kingston to our south at Colorina, and then we have Peel Mining and Aurelia on our western side. Look, I think there's good communications between all of us so that we understand what our objectives are and where there may be opportunities for ongoing collaboration.
Well, as you say, plenty of opportunities ahead. The one copper Powerball analogy, I think, is a great one. You've outlined the story well, answered all the questions, Mike. Thanks for your time. That does bring to an end our webinar for Helix Resources today. Thank you, everyone, for your time to tune in to listen to the presentation, and to Mike for such an insightful presentation, not just on Helix and what it's doing, but the wider region in which it operates and where the opportunity lies. Contact details for the company can be found on the website should you wish to follow up with Mike directly. And I know Mike is very respectful and interested in talking to any shareholders who wish to engage with the company and understand more. So, Mike, thanks for your time.
Thank you, David, and thank you for the people that have logged into the webinar. And I hope your voice holds out. and that you're feeling better soon. Thank you very much.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate everyone bearing with me. So have a great day.
See you.